Hello, everyone. I think I am going through. Okay. Now, today we are going to be talking about food sensitivity and why I don't recommend doing a typical food sensitivity panel. This is a hot topic because there are a lot of food sensitivity panels out there and not all are created equal. So if you've ever wondered about food sensitivities and how they affect ADHD, then this is definitely what you want to stay tuned in for. Give me a yes in the comments if you've ever wondered about how it can help ADHD. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dana Kay. I'm a board certified holistic health and nutrition practitioner, and I work with families all across the country, teaching them what foods to eliminate, what foods to eat more of, and what they can do to help support their children with ADHD naturally. And today I want to share a little bit about food sensitivities because it is actually one of the most common topics that people have questions about. And food sensitivities often play a huge role in ADHD symptoms, and that's because food sensitivities equal inflammation in the body, which equals more ADHD symptoms. But here's the key that many people don't understand. Just taking out these foods will not be enough. So many parents assume that food sensitivities are the problem, but really they are not the problem. Instead, they are the result of something else going on in the body. Something caused the food sensitivity in the first place. And if you don't do anything about the underlying issue, removing the foods won't be enough. It might ease the pressure short term because when you remove the foods, you decrease inflammation, but it actually won't fix the underlying issue. Now, hopefully this is all making sense so far. Can you let me know in the comments with either a yes or a no, and I can explain a little bit further if you need to. Okay, just keeping an eye on that. Great. So, what's a parent to do when they suspect food sensitivities are an issue for their child? So in my business, we don't just remove the foods that show up on a food sensitivity panel. We also run a couple of other tests to help us determine what caused the food sensitivities in the first place. Then we use targeted supplementation to address these underlying issues while we also remove those foods that the child is sensitive to. Then once the gut is in a good place, and this is usually 3 to 6 months or so, depending on the child and the level of reactivity, we can typically reintroduce each of these foods without an issue. But again, here's the key. Gut healing has to be in place while the foods are removed for the process to be effective. So what are the tests we use to figure out what might be causing the food sensitivities? So are you ready? Right, and you might need your pens and your papers to write down this information. Let's get started. So there are 4 foundational functional lab tests that I recommend and use with my families that work with me. I do have access to hundreds of other tests, but these 4 give you a really great starting point to look at the entire body rather than just casting the net too wide. We could go here, we could go there, we could go here, but this gives us a good overview of what's going on. And the first is a gut stool test. Now, they're not created equal. So the one that you might get at a doctor that's covered under insurance will not give you all the information. They only check, a handful of parasites that are the most common. They don't check all the different types of bacteria. They don't check for an imbalance of the gut bacteria, and they don't check some really critical health gut markers that the ones that I use do test. So it does give us a clear picture of the state of the gut. It does look for those parasites, but a lot more than just what the standard tests do. It does look for bacteria, yeast overgrowth. It looks at inflammation, digestion, and even metabolic functions of the gut. Now, the second test I recommend is a food sensitivity panel, but again, not all are created equal. You could go off and you could buy a food sensitivity panel online and get that sent to your house. But what that sensitivity panel is doing, it's looking at the top protein level of the food, and it's looking at the food in its raw state. Okay, so in its raw state is different than in its cooked state, and it's only looking at the top protein level. So in my experience, we use one on the market from Vibrant Wellness, and it's called a Zuma test, and you do need a practitioner to order that for you. And it looks at the individual sensitivities to different foods at the peptide level. So egg, for example, there's something like 15 different peptides inside egg. If we're just testing the top protein level, we don't know if they're reacting at the lower peptide level. So I just want to explain further about the gut function and link it to the food sensitivity, because I think that's a really important thing to understand. Now, when we eat food, our gut breaks down that food into micronutrient sized particles, and those particles go through the lining of the gut into our cells to give us the nutrients we need so we can function optimally. However, a lot of our kids have something called leaky gut. And I've done another video on leaky gut, so you can search that in the group as well. It goes into a lot more detail. But basically, it's the breakdown of the lining of the gut, and it forms these large holes in the lining. Probably not that big. That's probably the size of your stomach. But it forms these large holes in the lining. Now, when we eat food, even really healthy food, before the gut has had a chance to break it down, it can go through the holes in the gut and into our bloodstream. Now, when something foreign goes into our bloodstream, our body recognizes it as a foreign object and it turns on an immune response. But if that large molecule is in fact a large food macronutrient or protein, then your immune system might start sending signals to create an immune response, and it starts creating antibodies and it starts attacking it. And the body has a really, really great memory. So anytime you eat that food again, your immune system sees it as dangerous, it attacks it, it causes more inflammation and continues to further break down the lining of the gut. Now, all of this results in food intolerances. So something starts leaky gut, which is really important to find out. The things like the parasites or antibiotics or bacteria, then leaky gut causes food intolerances, and food intolerances then continue to cause leaky gut. So it's this vicious cycle. So in order to heal the gut, you must remove the foods or they will continue to break down the lining of the gut and you won't be successful. But at the same time, as you're removing the foods, you must also heal the gut, because just removing them won't actually get to the root of what's going on. So the test that we use looks for inflammatory reactions in the body to these certain foods, but at the peptide level. Now, the important thing to remember is food sensitivities are not true allergies, but they do cause inflammation in the body. So you can actually heal from sensitivities. Once the gut function is improved, we can start to add back those foods into the diet. So I hope this is making sense. Let me know in the comments if it's not, or if you've got any questions. It's a little bit technical, but we're going to move on to the third test, and that is something called an organic acid test. And this test looks at over 65 important markers in the whole body and how it's functioning. So it shows you the need for specific nutrients such as B vitamins, which are really important for our compromised kids, diet modification, detoxification, mitochondrial function, oxidative stress. These are all sort of technical issues, but are really important in our compromised kids. It also looks for yeast. It looks for mold toxicity, and you'd be surprised how many times I've picked up chronic mold inside a kid's body that's contributing to their symptoms. Now, the final test that I recommend is something called a cryptopyrrole test. Pyrroles, again, I've done a training on this in the Facebook group, so you can search for that. But just a quick summary, it's basically a normal chemical byproduct in the body. But what happens is they attach to B6 and zinc and draw out these elements out of the body when you go to the toilet, when they're excreted through the urine. So when a person's body is in a state of dysfunction, it may cause their body to produce elevated levels of cryptopyrroles. And if this occurs, it can result in a dramatic deficiency of the zinc and B6. And zinc and B6 are critical for mental health. So this is might be heard of or known as pyroluria. And it's frequently identified in behavioral disorders, ADHD, depression, aggression, violent behavior. It also includes symptoms of poor tolerance to physical or emotional stress, poor anger control, mood swings, poor short-term memory, and sensitivity to light and sound. And a lot of those symptoms correlate to a lot of symptoms of ADHD as well. And this is a urine test. So, if you feel your child may benefit from having these tests done, or you need help supporting your child, excuse me, there's a little dog barking in the background, sorry, got sidetracked by the dog. This is live. If you feel that your child may benefit from having these tests, or you need help supporting your child through food and natural strategies, I have set aside some time for me and my team to speak with you about developing a personalized plan of attack for your child. Every child is a bio individual, and so it's really important that you develop a personalized plan for your child. Now, you can book a free call with my team at the link that I'm going to pop in the comments below. The key thing to remember today is that food sensitivities can play a huge part in ADHD symptoms, but just running a typical food sensitivity panel probably will not give you the information you really need, like what's causing the food sensitivities in the first place. Remember, gut healing is critical, and it's a critical part of addressing food sensitivities and ADHD sensitivities. So hopefully this was a little bit helpful. As always, if you've got any questions, let me know in the comments. I'm always happy to help. Bye for now. I'll talk to you all soon.